The iron gates closed behind me with a finality that shook the bones of the earth. It was a heavy, grinding sound, metal against stone, echoing through the courtyard like the closing of a tomb. I stood there for a moment, my hands tucked deep into the rough wool of my habit, watching the world I had known disappear behind the bars. The sky above was a bruised purple, twilight bleeding into night, and the air smelled of damp stone and dying leaves. I had come here seeking peace. That was what I told the gatekeeper, that was what I told myself as I packed my single bag and left the city lights behind. I wanted silence. I wanted to pray away the noise in my head, the restlessness that had kept me awake for years, the feeling that I was made for something more than the mundane life waiting for me outside these walls. But as the lock clicked into place, a shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. It was a feeling of being trapped, yes, but also of being expected. The convent of St. Agatha was not like the pictures I had seen. It was older, darker, looming against the horizon like a fortress built to keep something in rather than keep something out. The sister who greeted me at the gate had not spoken a word. She simply nodded, her eyes hidden beneath the shadow of her veil, and gestured for me to follow. We walked across the cobblestones, the sound of our footsteps swallowed by the thick moss growing between the cracks. The silence here was heavy. It wasn't the peaceful silence of a library or a bedroom. It was a waiting silence. It pressed against my ears, demanding attention. I could feel the weight of the building watching me. The windows were narrow slits, like eyes narrowed in judgment, and the ivy clinging to the stone walls looked like veins pulsing in the dim light. I was led through the main entrance into a hallway that smelled of beeswax and old incense. The air was colder inside, stagnant and still. My guide stopped before a large oak door and knocked twice sharply. She did not wait for a response. She simply turned and walked away, her habits swishing softly, leaving me alone in the corridor. I was alone, yet I felt profoundly watched. I smoothed the fabric of my skirt, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. I had never been good with authority. I had never been good with being told what to do, yet here I was, standing at the threshold of the highest authority in this place, waiting to be summoned. I told myself it was nerves. I told myself it was the gravity of the vows I was about to take. But deep down in the quietest part of my soul I knew it was something else. It was anticipation. The door opened. I was not called in. It simply swung inward, revealing a room bathed in the flickering light of a dozen candles. I stepped inside, the wood floor creaking under my weight. The room was sparse, yet opulent in its simplicity. A large desk of dark wood dominated the space, covered in papers and a single open Bible. But my eyes did not go to the desk. They went to the woman standing behind it. Mother Superior Magdalene. I had heard stories about her on the journey here. They said she was strict, that she ruled the convent with an iron will, that she had never smiled in 20 years. They said she was beautiful, but in the way a storm is beautiful, dangerous and overwhelming. Standing before her, I realized the stories had not done her justice. She was tall, her posture rigid and perfect. Her habit was immaculate, the white fabric stark against the shadows of the room. But it was her face that stole the breath from my lungs. She was older than me, perhaps in her 40s, but time seemed to have carved her features rather than softened them. Her cheekbones were sharp, her lips a pale rose color, pressed into a line of absolute control. But her eyes were dark, almost black, and they locked onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. She did not speak immediately. She simply looked at me, her gaze traveling over my face, down to my hands, which were trembling slightly at my sides, and back up to my eyes. It was an inspection. I felt naked under that stare, as if she could see through the wool of my habit, through the skin, straight into the chaotic mess of my heart. I wanted to look away. I wanted to drop my gaze to the floor as a sign of humility, but I found I could not. I was pinned in place by those dark eyes. There was a hunger in them, hidden beneath layers of discipline, but it was there. I saw it flicker just for a second like a candle flame in a draft. "Sister Claire," she said finally. Her voice was low, a contralto that seemed to vibrate in the air between us. It was not a loud voice, but it filled the room completely. It was a voice that commanded obedience without needing to raise its tone. "You are later than I expected." I apologize, Mother," I stammered. My own voice sounded thin, childish compared to hers. The gate. It took a moment to close. The gate always takes a moment to close, she replied, stepping out from behind the desk. She moved with a fluid grace that belied her strict demeanor. She walked around the edge of the desk, approaching me slowly. The sound of her footsteps was silent on the rug. I held my breath as she closed the distance. She stopped just inches from me. I could smell her now. Not incense. Not old paper. She smelled of lavender and something darker, like rain on hot stone. It was an intoxicating scent, one that made my head spin. She reached out a hand. I flinched instinctively, but she did not pull back. Her fingers were cool and dry as they touched my chin, tilting my head up so I had to look directly into her eyes. Her touch was firm, controlling, yet there was a gentleness in the way her thumb brushed against my jawline. It was a possessive gesture. It sent a jolt of electricity through my body, a heat that pooled low in my stomach and made my breath hitch. I should have pulled away. I should have stepped back. This was inappropriate. This was not how a novice was greeted by a mother superior. But I leaned into her touch. I couldn't help it. It was as if my body recognized something my mind did not yet understand. "You are trembling," she whispered. Her face was so close now that I could feel the warmth of her breath on my lips. "Are you afraid, Claire?" "Yes," I admitted, the word slipping out before I could stop it. "Good," she said, her lips curving into a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Fear keeps you sharp. Fear keeps you honest." She dropped her hand and the loss of her touch felt like a physical ache. She turned away from me, walking back toward the candlelight, her silhouette sharp against the glow. "You have come here seeking peace, Sister Claire. But peace is not given. It is taken. It is forged in the fire of discipline. And I am the one who holds the match." She turned back to me, her expression unreadable once more. The moment of intimacy was gone, buried beneath the mask of authority, but I could still feel the heat of it on my skin. I could still feel the ghost of her fingers on my chin. "You are here to learn obedience," she said, her voice hardening. "You are here to learn silence. But you must understand that in this convent, silence does not mean absence. Silence is presence. It is the space where secrets live." She walked back to the desk and picked up a single key. It was old, iron, and heavy. She held it out to me but did not let go when I reached for it. Our fingers brushed again, and this time I saw her pupils dilate. The air in the room seemed to thicken, charged with something unspoken. "This is the key to the library," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a secret shared only between us. "You will spend your evenings there. Studying. Praying. Alone." "Alone, Mother?" I asked, confusion mixing with the thrill still racing through my veins. "For now," she said. She finally released the key, letting it drop into my palm. It was cold, but my hand was burning. "But you will not be alone tonight. There are 2 protocols. Initiations that must be observed before you are fully accepted into the fold." She leaned forward over the desk, her hands gripping the wood, her knuckles white. The candlelight flickered in her eyes, making them look like deep pools of ink. "You will report to my private quarters tonight," she said, her voice low and commanding, leaving no room for argument. "At midnight. Do not tell the other sisters. Do not speak of this to anyone." "My quarters?" I asked, my heart hammering so hard I thought she must be able to hear it. Did I stutter, Sister Claire? The edge in her voice was sharp, but beneath it I heard something else. A promise. A threat. A desire. "No, Mother," I whispered. "Good." She straightened up, smoothing her habit, reclaiming her composure. "You may go. Find your cell. Rest. You will need your strength." I turned to leave, my legs feeling like they might give way beneath me. I walked to the door, my hand on the latch, and I looked back. He was watching me still. She had not moved. She was standing in the circle of candlelight, a statue of devotion and danger. As I opened the door, she spoke one last time, her voice following me out into the dark hallway. "Do not be late, Claire," she said. "I dislike waiting. And I have a feeling you will not want to keep me waiting." The door clicked shut behind me, separating me from her, from the candles, from the scent of lavender and rain. I stood in the cold corridor, the iron key burning in my hand. My heart was racing, my skin was flushed, and the silence of the convent no longer felt empty. It felt full. It felt alive. I had come here looking for God, looking for peace, looking to escape the desires that had haunted me in the world outside. But as I walked down the shadowed hall toward my cell, I realized with a terrifying clarity that I had not escaped anything. I had walked straight into the fire. And the woman waiting for me in the dark. She was not going to let me burn alone. I clutched the key to my chest, feeling the metal bite into my palm, and I whispered a prayer that I knew would not be answered. Because I didn't want salvation anymore. I wanted to know what happened at midnight. The clock in my cell ticked with a sound like a hammer striking bone. 1 second. 2 seconds. Each movement of the hand was a judgment, counting down the time until I had to leave the safety of my small room and walk back into the shadows where she waited. Midnight. The hour of spirits, the hour of sins, the hour when the world between the living and the dead grows thin. I sat on the edge of my cot, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, trying to pray. But the words would not come. The Our Father felt like ash in my mouth. All I could think about was the scent of lavender. All I could feel was the ghost of her fingers on my chin. I had tried to sleep. I had laid down on the stiff mattress, pulling the rough wool blanket up to my neck, closing my eyes against the darkness. But every time I drifted off, I saw her. Mother Superior Magdalene. Standing in the candlelight. Her eyes dark as ink, promising something I could not name. It was not a nightmare. That was the terrifying part. If it were a nightmare, I could wake up. I could cross myself and ask for protection. But this was a desire. It woke in me like a hunger I had tried to starve for years. I sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold against my bare feet. I slipped into my sandals and stood before the small crucifix hanging on the wall. "Forgive me," I whispered to the silent room. "I do not know what I am doing." But I did know. I was going to her. I was walking into the fire willingly. I opened the door and stepped out into the corridor. The convent at night was a different creature than during the day. The shadows stretched longer, pooling in the corners like spilled ink. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant wind rattling the high windows. I walked softly, my habit whispering against the stone walls. I felt like an intruder in my own sanctuary. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a thunderclap. I expected a sister to step out from the darkness to question me, to demand to know why I was wandering the halls after hours. But the halls were empty. It was as if the convent held its breath, waiting for me to reach my destination. I reached the heavy oak door of the Mother Superior's office. My hand hovered over the wood. I could turn back. I could go to my room, lock the door, and pretend this never happened. I could pretend I didn't feel the heat rising in my cheeks when I thought of her voice. But my hand moved on its own. I knocked. 3 soft taps. The sound echoed in the empty hall. "Enter." Her voice came from inside. It was not loud, but it cut through the silence like a knife. I pushed the door open. The room was different at night. The shadows had deepened, retreating into the corners, leaving the center of the room bathed in the warm, flickering glow of the candles on the desk. Magdalene was not behind the desk this time. She was standing near the window, her back to me, looking out into the dark courtyard. She did not turn as I entered. She waited until I closed the door behind me, sealing us in together. The click of the latch sounded final, like a lock engaging on a cage. "Come here, Claire," she said. She still did not turn. I walked toward her, my heart hammering against my ribs. I stopped a few feet behind her. "Mother." "Turn around," she commanded softly. I obeyed. I turned my back to her, facing the window, seeing my own reflection in the dark glass. I could see her reflection behind me. She was close. Too close. I could feel the heat radiating from her body. She stepped in until there was no space left between us. I could feel the fabric of her habit brushing against mine. I stopped breathing. "Your posture is sloppy," she murmured. Her voice was right at my ear. "You slump when you pray. You shrink when you should stand tall. A vessel of God must be strong. It must not break." Her hands came up to my shoulders. Her touch was firm, grounding. She pressed down on my shoulders, forcing me to straighten my spine. The pressure was intense, demanding obedience. I felt my muscles tense under her hands, then slowly relax as she worked out the knots of my anxiety. Her fingers moved down my arms, adjusting the hang of my sleeves. Every touch was deliberate. Every movement was a claim. "Your hands," she said. She took my hands in hers. Her palms were warm, her grip strong. She interlaced her fingers with mine, pulling my hands down in front of my body. "When you pray, your hands should be open. Ready to receive." But you clutch them. You hold on too tight. You are afraid to let go. I am afraid of many things, Mother, I whispered. I couldn't help it. The intimacy of the position. The way she was molding me like clay made me dizzy. Tell me, she said. She turned me around slowly. Now we were face to face. The candles behind her created a halo of light around her head, but her face was in shadow. What are you afraid of, Claire? I am afraid of failing, I said. It was the safe answer. The answer a novice should give. Magdalene smiled. It was a small, knowing smile. You are afraid of yourself. You are afraid of what you feel when you are alone in the dark. She stepped closer. I had nowhere to go. My back was against the window ledge. I see it in your eyes. You have wandering thoughts. You come to this house seeking peace, but your heart is restless. She reached up and touched my face. Her thumb traced the line of my cheekbone moving down to my lips. I froze. This was beyond instruction. This was beyond discipline. But I did not pull away. I leaned into her hand. My eyes fluttered closed. Is it a sin, she whispered, to want something more than silence? I don't know, I breathed. My voice was trembling. Look at me, she commanded. I opened my eyes. Her gaze was intense, burning with a fire that matched the candles. There are sins of the flesh, Claire. And there are sins of the spirit. But the greatest sin is to deny what God has placed within you. If He gave you a heart that beats faster when I touch you, who am I to tell you to stop it? My breath hitched. Mother, someone might hear. Let them hear, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous low. Let them know that you are mine to guide. Mine to protect. She moved her hand from my cheek to my veil. The white fabric framed my face, a symbol of my devotion. She began to adjust it, her fingers brushing against my hair, tucking a stray strand behind my ear. The touch was electric. It sent shivers down my neck. You feel unsafe, don't you? In the world. Even here. Yes, I admitted. The word was a confession. I feel exposed. You are not exposed, she said firmly. Her hands rested on my shoulders again, holding me steady. You are under my protection. No one will touch you. No one will harm you. As long as you are within these walls, you are under my care. And I do not share what is mine. The possessiveness in her voice sent a thrill through me that was darker than fear. It was a promise of safety but also a promise of ownership. I looked up at her, seeing the strict lines of her face softened by the candlelight. For a moment the Mother Superior vanished. There was just a woman. A woman who looked as lonely as I felt. Thank you, I whispered. Do not thank me yet, she said. Her hands slid down from my shoulders to my hands again. He squeezed them. Faith is a trial. Love is a trial. You must be strong enough to endure both. She leaned in, her forehead resting against mine. I could feel her breath, steady and warm. You are doing well, Claire. Better than you know. We stood there for a long moment, foreheads touching, hands clasped. It was a prayer without words. A communion of spirits. I felt a tear slip from my eye, tracking down my cheek. She did not wipe it away. She let it fall, watching it with dark eyes. Mother, I started to say, but the words died in my throat. Shoo, she whispered. She lifted a hand to my lips again. No more words tonight. Just be. The silence stretched between us, comfortable and heavy. I felt safe. For the first time in my life I felt truly safe. The walls of the convent were not trapping me, they were holding me. And she was not holding me down, she was holding me up. I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into the moment, letting myself believe that this was enough. That this quiet intimacy was all we would ever need. Then the knock came. It was loud. 3 heavy raps on the oak door. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Magdalene pulled away from me instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by the cold air of the room. Her face hardened, the mask of the Mother Superior slamming back into place. She moved with sudden urgency, stepping back from the window away from me. Who is it? She called out. Her voice was steady, but I heard the tension beneath it. Bishop Thorne, a voice replied from the other side. I require an audience, Mother Superior. Immediately. Magdalene's eyes widened. She looked at me, panic flashing in her dark eyes for the first time. She gestured sharply to the corner of the room. behind the heavy velvet curtains that covered the bookshelf. "Hide," she whispered. The word was urgent, fearful. "Now, Claire. Do not make a sound." I scrambled backward, my heart pounding in my throat. I ducked behind the curtain just as the door handle began to turn. I pulled the fabric closed around me, plunging myself into darkness. I could see nothing, but I could hear everything. I heard Magdalene smooth her habit. I heard her take a deep, steadying breath. I heard the door open. "Bishop," Magdalene said. Her voice was ice. "To what do we owe this honor at such an hour?" "I heard movements," the bishop's voice replied. It was smooth, slippery. I thought I heard voices. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle my breathing. I stood in the dark behind the curtain, trembling. The scent of lavender was still on my skin, but now it smelled like danger. I was hidden, but I knew. We were no longer alone. The walls had ears. And the silence was about to break. The shadow of the velvet curtain was heavy, suffocating. I stood behind it, my hands pressed over my mouth, stifling the sound of my own breathing. Through the thin fabric, I could hear the bishop's voice. It was smooth, oily, sliding through the room like a serpent. He spoke of inspections, of rumors, of irregularities in the convent's silence. Magdalene's voice was a shield, sharp and impenetrable, deflecting his questions with cold precision. I heard the rustle of paper, the clink of a candlestick, the slow, deliberate pacing of boots on the wood floor. Every second felt like an hour. I prayed to every saint I could name, not for salvation but for invisibility. I wanted to be stone. I wanted to be dust. Finally, after an eternity of tense silence, the door opened. I heard the bishop's footsteps receding down the hall. Magdalene did not speak. I waited until the silence returned, thick and heavy. Then a whisper. "Come out." I stepped from behind the curtain. Magdalene was standing by the desk, her hand gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. It mirrored my own. "Go," she said softly. "Return to your cell. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me." I fled. I ran through the dark corridors, my heart pounding in my throat, until I reached the safety of my room. I locked the door and slid down against the wood, sitting on the cold floor. I did not sleep. How could I? The image of the bishop's cold eyes was burned into my mind. But worse than the fear was the memory of Magdalene's touch. Even in the face of danger, even with the threat of exposure hanging over us like a blade, I could not stop thinking about the warmth of her hand on my cheek. It was a sickness. It was a sin. And yet it was the only thing that kept me warm in the freezing cell. When the clock struck 2, I could not stay still. The walls of my room felt like they were closing in. I needed air. I needed space. I needed absolution. I slipped out of my room again, moving like a ghost through the sleeping convent. This time I did not go to the office. I went to the chapel. The chapel was vast, a cavern of shadows and faith. The only light came from the sanctuary lamp, a small red eye burning before the tabernacle. The air smelled of old wood and wax. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps silent on the stone. I felt small here. Insignificant. But I also felt watched. Not by God but by the darkness itself. I approached the confessional booths. They were old, carved from dark oak, intricate latticework separating the penitent from the priest. They were designed to hide identity, to allow secrets to be spoken without shame. I entered the penitent's side. The wood was cold against my knees as I knelt. The space was cramped, a box built for secrets. I crossed myself, my hand trembling. I waited. I did not expect anyone to be there. It was the middle of the night. The priests were asleep. The sisters were asleep. But then I heard a shift in the other booth. The sound of fabric rustling. The sound of breathing. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," I whispered automatically. The words felt wrong on my tongue. There was no father here. "There is no father here, Claire," a voice replied. My heart stopped. I knew that voice. It was low, resonant, vibrating through the thin wood of the partition. Magdalene. She was on the other side. She was the one listening. I should have left. I should have stood up and walked away. But I was rooted to the spot. The lattice screen between us was a barrier, but it felt like a bridge. We were separated by inches of carved wood, yet we were closer than we had ever been. "Mother," I whispered. I didn't know." "I know," she said. Her voice was softer here, stripped of the authority she used in the office. In the dark, behind the screen, she was not the mother superior. She was just a woman. You could not sleep. Neither could I. I need to confess, I said. The words tumbled out before I could check them. I have thoughts. Impure thoughts. We all have thoughts, Claire, she replied. I could hear the shift of her weight on the other side. What kind of thoughts? About belonging, I said. I closed my eyes, letting the darkness hide my blush. About wanting to be close to someone. About wanting to be touched. Silence. Long stretching silence. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the screen. It was slightly faster than usual. And who do you want to touch you, Claire? The question hung in the air, dangerous and intimate. I should not answer. I knew I should not answer. But the screen made me brave. The darkness made me honest. You, I whispered. The word was barely audible, but I knew she heard it. I heard her exhale sharply. That is a dangerous confession, she said. Her voice was rougher now, strained. I am your superior. I am your guide. To want me is to want the forbidden. I know, I said. Tears pricked my eyes. But I can't stop. When you touched me in your office, I felt alive. Alive, she repeated. The word sounded like a prayer on her lips. Yes, I know that feeling. It is rare. It is precious. She paused. Do you know why I called you here, Claire? Why I chose you for this convent? No, I whispered. Because I saw it in you, she said. The same hunger. The same loneliness. I thought, if I could guide you, if I could keep you close, perhaps we could bear it together. The silence. The cold. It's not cold anymore, I said. Not when you are near. Another silence. This one was charged, electric. I could feel the heat radiating through the wood. I imagined her on the other side, kneeling as I was. Her head bowed. Her hands clasped. But I knew her hands were not clasped. I knew they were trembling just like mine. Claire, she said. What we feel, it is not a sin. Not if it is true. God is love. And what I feel for you, it is the truest thing I have known in 20 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. Then why does it feel like wrong? Because the world makes it wrong, she said. Because men like Bishop Thorne make it wrong. They build walls to keep love out. But love finds a way through the cracks. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against the lattice. I am afraid, Magdalene. I used her name. I had never used her name before. It felt intimate, forbidden. I know, she said. I am too. We stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the dark, separated by a screen, connected by a secret. It was the most intimate moment of my life. More than any touch, more than any kiss, this sharing of souls in the dark was overwhelming. I felt understood. I felt seen. Narrator interlude. Before we continue this forbidden journey, I want to ask you something. If you are feeling the heat of this secret love, if your heart is racing like Claire's, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us share this story with others who seek forbidden romance. Comment below what you think will happen next. Will they escape or will the bishop catch them? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a chapter of the nun's secret desire. Your support keeps this story alive. Now back to the confessional. The voice in the booth shifted again. The moment of vulnerability was passing, replaced by something more urgent. Claire, Magdalene said. This screen, it is a barrier. It hides us, yes. But it also keeps us apart. I know, I said. My voice was thick with emotion. I want to see you, she said. The command was soft, but it carried weight. I want to look into your eyes when you say these things. I want to know that you are real. Mother, someone might see, I whispered. The fear was still there, lurking in the shadows of the chapel. No one is here, she said. The night is ours. The chapel is ours. I heard the sound of the latch on her side of the confessional. The small wooden slide that covered the screen began to move. It scraped slowly, wood on wood. I am opening the screen, Claire. My breath caught. The barrier was coming down. The safety of anonymity was vanishing. Soon there would be nothing between us but the air. I could hear the slide fully retract. I could see the faint outline of her face through the opening now, illuminated by the red sanctuary lamp. Her eyes were watching me. Dark. Waiting. Come around, she whispered. The voice was not coming through the wood anymore. It was coming from the other side of the booth, clear and direct. Come to my side. I need to see your eyes. I stood up. My legs felt weak. I opened the door of the penitent's booth and stepped out into the aisle. The chapel was silent. The red light cast long shadows. I walked around the wooden structure to the other side. To her side. To the priest's side. He was standing there. She had risen from the kneeler. He was waiting for me. As I stepped into the shadow of the confessional booth with her, the space became incredibly small. We were alone in the dark, hidden by the heavy oak. She reached out and pulled me into the shadows behind the booth, away from the view of the altar. Look at me, she said. I looked up. Her face was inches from mine. I could see the pupils of her eyes dilated, swallowing the iris. She reached out and touched my face again just like in the office. But this time there was no pretense of instruction. This was pure desire. You are beautiful, she whispered. Do you know that? I am a novice, I stammered. You are a woman, she corrected. And I am a woman. And tonight, we are just us. She leaned in. I closed my eyes. I waited for the kiss. I wanted it more than I wanted air. But she stopped just before her lips touched mine. She hovered there, her breath mingling with mine, teasing me, tormenting me. Tell me, she whispered against my lips. Tell me you belong to me. I belong to you, I breathed. Good, she said. Then she pulled back slightly, her eyes scanning the dark chapel behind me. But we must be careful. The shadows have ears, Claire. And the bishop, he does not sleep as deeply as we hope. She stepped back, putting distance between us again. The loss of her proximity was physical pain. Go back to your cell, she said. Now. Before the sun rises. Before the others wake. But. I started. Go, she commanded gently. We will speak again. I promise. I turned to leave, my heart heavy with the mixture of joy and fear. I walked back down the aisle toward the door. But as I reached the entrance of the chapel, I looked back. She was still standing in the shadow of the confessional, watching me. But she was not alone. In the far corner of the chapel, near the statue of the Virgin Mary, a shadow detached itself from the wall. A figure. Wearing a cassock. Watching us. My blood ran cold. It was not a statue. It was a man. And he was holding something in his hand. Something that glinted in the red light. A camera. Or a weapon. Magdalene saw him too. I saw her stiffen. She stepped in front of the confessional, shielding me from view. She raised a hand, a signal to stay back. To run. I turned and fled into the night. The image of that shadow burned into my mind. The confession was over. The secret was out. And the hunt had begun. The rain began as a whisper, a soft tapping against the stained glass. But by the time I reached the corridor outside the chapel, it had become a roar. The sky opened up, unleashing a fury that shook the ancient stones of the convent. Thunder rolled overhead, a deep, guttural growl that vibrated in my chest. I ran. I did not look back. I could not look back. The image of that shadow in the corner of the chapel was burned into my mind. A man. Watching. Waiting. I felt exposed, naked despite the heavy wool of my habit. I needed to hide. I needed to find safety. But where was safety in a house full of secrets? I reached the junction of the hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The lights flickered above me, the electric bulbs buzzing angrily against the storm. Then with a pop they died. The convent was plunged into darkness, save for the occasional flash of lightning that illuminated the corridor in stark blue-white bursts. I stood frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was alone. Or so I thought. Claire. The voice came from the shadows. I spun around, ready to scream, but a hand clamped over my mouth. It was warm. Familiar. I smelled lavender. Rain. Stone. Quiet. Magdalene whispered. She stepped out of the darkness, her face pale in the flash of another lightning strike. She looked terrified, but her grip on my arm was firm. Did you see him? I think so, I stammered, my voice muffled against her hand. She lowered it slowly. In the chapel. Near the statue. Thorn, she hissed. The name was like a curse on her lips. He knows. Or he suspects. We cannot stay in the halls. If he patrols tonight, he will find you. What do we do? I asked. The thunder cracked again, louder this time, making me jump. Magdalene pulled me closer, her arm wrapping around my waist. The gesture was protective, but it also sent that familiar heat rushing through my veins. Even in fear, my body responded to her. "The library," she said. "There is a hidden alcove behind the theology section. No one goes there. Come." She led me through the darkened halls. We moved by instinct and the brief flashes of lightning. The convent felt alive around us, the wind howling through the cracks in the masonry like a grieving spirit. We reached the heavy doors of the library. Magdalene pushed them open and we slipped inside. The smell of old paper and leather welcomed us, a dry sanctuary against the wet storm. She guided me through the rows of towering bookshelves, deeper into the room than I had ever been. She stopped before a large wooden cabinet filled with bound scriptures. She pushed against the side of it, and with a groan of hinges, it swung inward. A hidden space. Small, cramped, lined with cushions and a single small table. It was a secret within a secret. "Inside," she commanded. I stepped in. She followed, pulling the cabinet shut behind us. We were in total darkness. I heard the strike of a match, then the flare of a candle. She lit 3 more, placing them on the table. The light was dim, golden, flickering against the rows of books that formed the walls of our prison. "We are trapped," I said, sitting on the cushions. The space was intimate. Too intimate. Our knees almost touched. "We are safe," Magdalene corrected. She sat opposite me, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. The strict lines of her face were softened by the glow. She looked tired. The mask of the Mother Superior was slipping. For now. The storm raged outside. Rain lashed against the outer walls, but in here it was quiet. The silence was different than before. It wasn't the heavy, judging silence of the convent. It was a shared silence. A conspiracy. "Why did you bring me here?" I asked. My voice sounded loud in the small space. Magdalene looked down at her hands. They were trembling. I had never seen her tremble before. "Because I could not let him find you. Because..." She looked up, meeting my eyes. "Because I could not let him take you away from me." Take me? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. "He would expel me." "Worse," she said softly. "He would use you. He would use your confession, your feelings, to destroy me. To destroy this house." She leaned forward. The candlelight flickered between us. "Claire, you must understand. What is happening between us? It is dangerous. Not just for our vows, but for our lives." "Then why?" I asked. The question had been burning in me since the confessional. "If it is so dangerous, why did you call me to your office? Why did you come to the chapel? Why do you touch me?" Magdalene was silent for a long moment. The wind howled outside, a lonely sound. "Because I am selfish," she admitted. The words were whispered, heavy with guilt. "I have lived in this house for 20 years. I have prayed. I have fasted. I have denied myself everything. But I have never felt alive. Not until you walked through those gates." She reached across the small table. Her hand hovered over mine. "You bring light, Claire. Even in the dark. Even in the sin." "It's not sin," I said fiercely. I turned my hand over, palm up, inviting her touch. "It feels like salvation." Magdalene's eyes filled with tears. She placed her hand in mine. Her skin was warm, her grip tight. "Salvation," she repeated. "Perhaps God works in ways we do not understand. Perhaps He sent you to save me from myself." The air between us shifted. The fear of the bishop, the storm, the vows, it all faded into the background. There was only this room. This light. This woman. I stood up. The space was too small to stand, but I needed to be closer. I moved around the table. Magdalene stood to meet me. We were inches apart. I could feel the heat radiating from her body. I could see the pulse beating in her throat. "I don't want to hide anymore," I whispered. "Then do not," she said. Her voice was rough, broken. I reached up and touched her face. Her skin was soft beneath my fingertips. I traced the line of her jaw, the curve of her lips. She leaned into my touch, closing her eyes. It was a surrender. The Mother Superior was gone. There was only Magdalene. "Claire," she breathed. I leaned in. This time there was no screen. No wood. No shadows. Just us. I pressed my lips to hers. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate. It was a collision of everything we had suppressed, everything we had denied. It tasted of salt and wax and longing. She made a sound in her throat, a low moan that vibrated against my lips. Her hands came up to grip my waist, pulling me flush against her. I could feel the beat of her heart against my own racing in time. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no convent, no bishop, no God. Only this heat, this connection. I wrapped my arms around her neck, burying my fingers in the hair beneath her veil. She held me tightly as if she were afraid I would disappear if she let go. We kissed until we were breathless, until our lungs burned for air. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested against each other. Our breathing was heavy in the small space. "I love you," I whispered. The words slipped out before I could check them. They hung in the air, terrifying and beautiful. Magdalene opened her eyes. They were dark, filled with a passion that scared me. "I know," she said. "I love you too." She kissed me again, softer this time. A promise. A vow. We stood there in the candlelight, holding each other while the storm raged outside. For a moment I believed we could survive this. I believed that love was enough to shield us from the world. Then the lightning struck. It was a massive bolt, close enough to shake the floor beneath our feet. The flash was blinding, illuminating the entire library through the cracks in the bookshelf cabinet. And in that split second of pure white light I saw him. He was standing outside the hidden door. He was not hiding. He was not lurking. He was standing right in front of the cabinet, watching us through the slats of the wood. Bishop Thorn. He was not holding a camera. He was holding a key. The light faded, plunging us back into the golden glow of the candles. But the image remained. He had seen us. He had seen the kiss. He had seen everything. Magdalene pulled away from me, her face pale. He had seen him too. "He has the key," she whispered. "To the cabinet." "How?" I asked, my voice trembling. "He built it," she said. Her voice was dead flat. "This was his study before he became bishop. He knows every secret in this house." A sound came from the other side of the wood. The scrape of metal against metal. He was inserting the key into the lock. "He is coming in," I said. Panic rose in my throat. I looked around for an exit, but there was none. We were trapped in a box within a room within a building. Magdalene stepped in front of me. She smoothed her habit. She lifted her chin. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She turned to face the door, shielding me with her body. "Let him come," she said. Her voice was steady, commanding. "We have nothing left to hide." The lock clicked. The door began to creak open. The light from the library spilled into our hidden alcove, casting long shadows across the floor. A silhouette filled the doorway. Imposing. "Mother Superior." Bishop Thorn's voice came from the darkness. It was calm. Too calm. I thought I heard voices. Magdalene did not flinch. "You were mistaken, Bishop. We were praying." "Praying," he repeated. He stepped into the light. His eyes moved from Magdalene to me. They lingered on my swollen lips, my flushed cheeks. He smiled. It was a cruel smile. "Yes, suppose you were. But I fear, your prayers have gone unanswered." He closed the door behind him. We were 3 people in a small box. 2 lovers. 1 judge. And the storm outside screamed like a witness. "Tell me, Claire," Thorn said, turning his gaze to me. "Do you know what the penalty is for breaking the vow of chastity? For corrupting a superior?" I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Magdalene stepped forward. "The penalty is mine to bear," Magdalene said. "She is a novice. She is under my guidance. If there is sin here, it is mine." "Brave," Thorn murmured. He took a step closer. "But bravery will not save you. The Vatican does not look kindly on deviations. Especially not in my diocese." He reached into his cassock and pulled out a piece of paper. "I have a transfer order. For you, Claire. To a convent in South America. Leaving tomorrow morning." "No," Magdalene said. The word was a growl. "Yes," Thorn countered. "And you, Mother Superior, you will be relieved of your duties. Pending an investigation." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "Enjoy your last night together," he said softly. "Because tomorrow, you will be worlds apart." He opened the cabinet door and stepped out into the library. We heard his footsteps fading away. The lock clicked again. He had locked us and I slumped against the bookshelf, sliding down to the floor. "He is sending me away," I whispered. The tears came then, hot and fast. Magdalene knelt beside me. She took my face in her hands. "He cannot," she said. "I will not let him." "How can you stop him?" I asked. "He has the authority." Magdalene's eyes hardened. The love was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Something dangerous. "Authority," she said, "can be challenged. Secrets can be used." She stood up, looking down at me. "We are not going to let him win, Claire. If he wants a war, he will have one." She blew out the candles. The room went dark. But in the darkness I could feel her hand finding mine. "Stay close," she whispered. "The night is not over." Outside the thunder rolled again. But inside the silence was louder. We were trapped. We were exposed. But we were together. And for the first time, I realized that Magdalene was not just a woman in love. She was a woman with a plan. And I was going to help her execute it. The dawn did not bring peace. It brought a gray, watery light that seeped through the cracks of the library cabinet, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like restless spirits. We had not slept. How could we? We sat on the cushions of the hidden alcove, backs against the books, listening to the storm slowly die outside. The rain had reduced to a drip, a rhythmic tapping that sounded like a clock counting down the end of our world. Magdalene had not moved from her spot near the door. She stood guard, her silhouette sharp against the faint light, watching the wood as if she expected it to splinter open at any moment. When the first bell for matins rang, distant and mournful, she finally turned to me. Her face was pale, the shadows under her eyes deep bruises. But her posture was rigid. The vulnerability of the night before was gone, locked away behind the mask of the Mother Superior. She reached into the fold of her habit and pulled out a small, thin piece of metal. I had not known she possessed such skills. She inserted it into the lock of the cabinet door. There was a click, soft but distinct. She pushed the door open. "We must return to our cells," she whispered, "before the sisters wake. If we are seen together, it is over." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We slipped out of the library, moving like ghosts through the gray corridors. The stone was cold under my feet, leaching the warmth from my body. When we reached the junction where our paths diverged, she stopped. She did not touch me. She did not look at me. She simply stared straight ahead. "Go," she said. Her voice was devoid of emotion. "Act normal. Pray. Do not give him a reason." "And you?" I asked. "I will face him," she said. "That is my duty." She walked away without looking back. I watched her disappear into the shadows of the main hall, her habit swishing softly. I felt alone. More alone than I had ever felt in my life. I crept into my cell and locked the door. I sat on the edge of my cot and waited for the sun to rise. I prayed, but the words felt like lies. I asked for strength, but I knew what I really wanted was her. When the bell for breakfast rang, I forced myself to stand. I smoothed my habit. I washed my face with cold water, trying to scrub away the evidence of the night. The tears, the fear, the passion. I looked in the small mirror. My eyes were red, but my face was calm. I looked like a novice. I looked like a servant of God. I looked like a liar. I walked to the refectory. The large dining hall was filled with the sisters, all seated in rows, heads bowed. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of spoons against wooden bowls. I took my seat near the back, keeping my eyes down. I could feel the air in the room changing. It was heavier than usual. I looked up just for a second. At the head of the table where Magdalene always sat Bishop Thorne. He was eating calmly, his posture perfect. He wore his black cassock like armor. Magdalene was not at the head. She was seated to his right in the seat of the second in command. It was a demotion. A public humiliation. She was eating her porridge, her eyes fixed on her bowl. She did not look up. She did not look at me. But I knew she was aware of me. I could feel her presence like a heat source in the cold room. Thorne lifted his head. His eyes scanned the room, cold and calculating. They passed over the sisters, dismissing them like objects until they landed on me. He stopped. He held my gaze for a long moment. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply watched. I felt naked under his stare. I felt as if he could see the kiss still burning on my lips. I looked down quickly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I picked up my spoon, but my hand was shaking so badly I could not lift it. Is something wrong, Sister Claire? The voice came from the head of the table. Thorn. The entire room froze. Spoons halted mid-air. Heads turned. I was the center of attention. I wanted to vanish. I wanted the stone floor to open up and swallow me whole. No, Bishop, I said. My voice was small, trembling. Nothing is wrong. You look troubled, he said. He set his spoon down. The clink echoed like a gunshot. The storm last night was severe. Perhaps it disturbed your sleep. Yes, Bishop, I whispered. The thunder. Thunder, he repeated. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Yes. Thunder can be very disturbing, especially when it hides other sounds. Other secrets. The air left the room. The sisters looked down at their bowls, pretending not to hear. Magdalene still did not look up, but I saw her hand tighten around her spoon. Her knuckles were white. Finish your meal, sisters, Thorn said, his voice returning to normal volume. We have much work to do today. Inspections. Corrections. He stood up. The movement was smooth, predatory. Sister Claire. A word. Please. It was not a request. It was a command. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I walked down the long aisle between the tables. Every eye was on me. I could feel Magdalene's gaze now, burning into the side of my face, but I dared not look at her. I reached the head of the table. Thorn gestured to the door. Walk with me, he said. I followed him out of the refectory into the cold hallway. He did not stop until we reached the guest room that had been prepared for him. He opened the door and ushered me inside. It was sparse, clean, impersonal. He closed the door and locked it. The sound of the lock engaging was final. Sit, he said, pointing to a wooden chair. I sat. He remained standing, looming over me. He walked to the window and looked out at the garden, his back to me. Do you know why I am here, Claire? To inspect the convent, Bishop, I said. Inspection is part of it, he said. He turned around. His face was hard, devoid of mercy. But I am here because of rumors. Whispers. Stories of inappropriate behavior. Of boundaries being crossed. I don't know anything about that, I said. It was a weak lie. Don't you? He walked toward me step by step. I was in the library last night, Claire. I heard voices. I saw light. My breath caught. The storm. The lightning. Do not insult my intelligence, he snapped. The sudden violence in his voice made me flinch. I know what I saw. I know what you did. And I know who you did it with. He stopped inches from me. I could smell him. Tobacco. Cold air. Power. Magdalene has lost her way. She has become soft. Sentimental. And you are the catalyst. You are the weakness she cannot resist. She is not weak, I said. The words slipped out before I could stop them. She is faithful. Thorn laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Faithful? To whom? To God? Or to you? He leaned down, placing his hands on the arms of my chair, trapping me. Let me be clear, sister. I have the authority to expel you. Today. Right now. I can send you back to the world you ran from. With a mark on your record that will ensure no other convent will ever take you. You will be alone. Unprotected. The threat hung in the air, heavy and real. Please, I whispered. Don't send me away. Then confess, he said. Tell me everything. Tell me what happened in the library. Tell me what happened in the confessional. Tell me everything and I might show mercy. I might let you stay. As a penitent. In silence. Alone. And her? I asked. What happens to her? That is not your concern, he said. Your concern is your soul. Save it. Before it is too late. He straightened up. You have until noon. Meet me in the chapel. If you do not come, I will assume you have chosen your path. And I will act accordingly. He unlocked the door and opened it. You may go. I stumbled out into the hallway. My legs were shaking so badly I could barely walk. I leaned against the cold stone wall, trying to catch my breath. He knew. He knew everything. And he was using me to break her. If I confessed, I saved myself, but I destroyed her. If I stayed silent, I lost everything. My home. My vocation. Her. I walked down the hall, my mind racing. I passed the chapel. I could see inside through the open door. Magdalene was there. She was kneeling before the altar, her head bowed. She looked small. Defeated. I stopped in the shadows of the archway watching her. She knew what Thorn was doing. She knew he was threatening me. As if she felt my presence, she lifted her head. She looked directly at me. Across the distance, across the danger, our eyes locked. She did not smile. She did not wave. She simply nodded. Once. A small, almost imperceptible movement. It was not a nod of submission. It was a nod of resolve. He was telling me something. Do not fear. I understood then. Thorn thought he was playing a game of chess. He thought he could move us like pieces. But he did not understand what was between us. It was not just desire. It was not just sin. It was a bond. A covenant. And covenants cannot be broken by threats. I walked away from the chapel. I did not go to my cell. I did not go to the bishop. I went to the garden. The rain had stopped, but the ground was wet. The sky was clearing, patches of blue appearing through the gray clouds. I stood under the old oak tree, the one where we had sometimes walked during the day. I looked up at the convent walls. They were high. They were strong. But they were not impenetrable. Thorn wanted me to choose between faith and love. But he was wrong. They were not mutually exclusive. My love for her was my faith. It was the only true thing I had found in this house. I would not confess. I would not beg. I would not let him take her away. The clock in the tower began to chime. 10 o'clock. 2 hours until noon. 2 hours until the deadline. I touched the rosary in my pocket. The beads were cold. I closed my eyes and made a decision. It was a dangerous decision. It was a foolish decision. But it was the only decision I could make. I would not meet the bishop in the chapel. I would meet Magdalene. We had to leave. Tonight. Before the sun set. Before he could sign the papers. Before he could tear us apart. I turned and walked back toward the convent. My steps were no longer trembling. They were steady. I was no longer a novice seeking peace. I was a woman seeking a future. And I would burn the whole world down to get it. The bishop thought he held the keys to the kingdom. But he forgot one thing. Love holds the key to the soul. And once that key is turned, there is no locking it again. I reached the main door. I pushed it open. The silence of the convent welcomed me back. But it was different now. It was not a silence of submission. It was a silence of preparation. The storm had passed. But the war had just begun. And I was ready to fight. The clock in the tower struck 11. The sound boomed across the courtyard, a deep, mournful toll that vibrated in the soles of my feet. 1 hour. I had 1 hour until the bishop's deadline. 1 hour until he expected me to kneel in the chapel and confess my sins, to name her, to destroy us both. I stood in the shadow of the archway outside the Mother Superior's office. My hand was raised to knock, but I froze. Voices drifted through the heavy oak wood. They were not whispering this time. They were fighting. I pressed my ear against the grain of the door. The wood was cold against my skin. You understand the gravity of this, Mother? Thorn's voice was sharp, clipped. I have the testimony of the gatekeeper. I have the evidence of your lapse in judgment. I can have you defrocked by morning. I understand the gravity, Bishop, Magdalene replied. Her voice was steady, but I heard the undercurrent of exhaustion. I accept whatever penalty you deem necessary. But Sister Claire is not involved. She is a novice. She is impressionable. I coerced her. My breath caught in my throat. She was lying. She was taking the blame. She was offering herself up as the sole sinner to protect me. I could picture her standing there, straight-backed, hands clasped, accepting her destruction so that I might survive. It was the ultimate act of love. And it was the ultimate mistake. Coerced her, Thorn repeated. He sounded skeptical. And yet she was the one found in your arms. She was the one who looked at you with devotion. Do you expect me to believe she was forced? I expect you to believe what protects the church, Magdalene said. Her voice hardened. Scandal helps no one. Expel me. Send me to a penitentiary. I do not care. But let her remain. Let her take her vows. She has a calling. A calling. Thorn laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. To you, or to God? You cannot separate the two, Magdalene. You have corrupted her vocation. You have twisted her faith into this. There was a sound of paper rustling. Sign this. Admit to misconduct. Admit to manipulation. And she walks free. I will sign, Magdalene said. I heard the scratch of a pen. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. She was doing it. She was signing her life away. She was giving up her position, her home, her dignity, all for me. I could not let her. I pushed the door open. It swung inward with a heavy creak that silenced the room instantly. Both of them turned to look at me. Thorn stood behind the desk, a pen in his hand, a smirk on his lips. Magdalene stood before him, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. Do not sign it, I said. My voice shook, but I stepped into the room. I closed the door behind me. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot. Claire, Magdalene whispered. You should not be here. I am exactly where I need to be, I said. I walked past her, standing between her and the bishop. I looked Thorn in the eye. I was a novice. He was a bishop. I was nothing. He was everything. But in that moment I felt larger than him. She did not coerce me. She did not manipulate me. I chose this. I choose her. Thorn leaned back in his chair, twirling the pen. Brave, he said. Foolish. But brave. Do you understand what you are saying? You are admitting to willful sin. You are rejecting your vows before you have even taken them. I am not rejecting my vows, I said. I felt Magdalene's hand brush against my arm, a silent plea for me to stop, to be safe. I pulled away gently. I am redefining them. You speak of God, Bishop. You speak of faith. But where is God in your threats? Where is love in your punishment? God is order, Thorn snapped. God is law. And you are breaking both. God is love, I countered. The words felt holy on my tongue. And if love is a sin, then your heaven is a place I do not wish to go. Thorn stood up. He was taller than me, imposing. He walked around the desk until he was looming over me. You speak like a heretic, he hissed. I can excommunicate you. I can ensure you never find peace in any church, in any city, in any country. You will be alone. I am not alone, I said. I reached back and took Magdalene's hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling. I squeezed them, pouring my strength into her. I have her. And that is enough. Thorn looked at our joined hands. His expression twisted into disgust. Then you have chosen your path. There is no return. You will both be removed. Tonight. You will pack your bags. You will leave these walls. And you will never return. We were leaving anyway, Magdalene said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a new weight. She stepped up beside me. She was no longer standing behind me. She was standing with me. We do not need your permission, Bishop. We do not need your blessing. You have nowhere to go, Thorn said. No money. No support. We have each other, I said. Thorn stared at us for a long moment. He seemed to realize that he had lost. He could break our vows, but he could not break our bond. He tossed the pen onto the desk. Get out, he said, before I change my mind and have you dragged out. We turned. We walked to the door together. We did not look back. We did not run. We walked with our heads high, hands clasped tightly between us. When we stepped into the hallway, the air felt different. Lighter. The weight of the convent was lifting from our shoulders. We went to Magdalene's quarters. The room looked different in the daylight. The shadows were gone. The candles were extinguished. It was just a room. A place we were leaving. Magdalene opened a small trunk beneath her bed. She began to pack. A few changes of clothes. A book. A brush. I went to my cell and did the same. It took only minutes. My life here fit into a single bag. When I returned to her room, she was standing by the window looking out at the garden wall. It was high, topped with iron spikes. The only way out. The gates are locked, she said. Thorn has posted guards. They will not let us pass. Then we do not use the gates, I said. I stood beside her. The wall looked insurmountable. But so had everything else we had faced. We climb. Magdalene turned to me. She reached up and unclasped the crucifix from her neck. It was silver, old, worn smooth by years of touch. He held it out to me. Take this, she said. I cannot, I whispered. It is yours. It is your faith. My faith is not in this metal, she said. She placed it in my palm and closed my fingers around it. It was warm from her skin. My faith is you now, Claire. You are the altar I pray at. You are the confession I speak. Keep it. So you remember that God is not in the walls. He is in us. Tears blurred my vision. I clutched the crucifix to my chest. I will keep it forever. We must go, she said. The sun is setting. The guard's chain shift at dusk. That is our window. We slipped out of the room. We moved through the shadows of the convent one last time. We passed the chapel. I paused for a moment looking at the closed doors. I said a silent prayer. Not for forgiveness, but for thanks. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for bringing her to me. We reached the garden. The air was cool, smelling of wet earth and blooming jasmine. The wall loomed ahead. There was an old trellis near the corner, covered in ivy. Looked sturdy enough. Magdalene tested it with her hand. I held. I will go first, she said. I will help you over. No, I said. We go together. Or not at all. She smiled. It was a real smile. Bright. Beautiful. Together, she agreed. She boosted me up. I grabbed the top of the wall. The stone was rough under my palms. I swung my leg over. The iron spikes glinted in the dying light. I carefully navigated them, lying flat on the top of the wall. I reached down. Magdalene grabbed my hand. Her grip was strong. I pulled. He climbed. She was heavier than me, but adrenaline lent me strength. She crested the wall and lay beside me. We lay there for a moment, side by side on the top of the wall. Below us was the convent garden. Above us was the open sky. We were suspended between two worlds. The world of vows and the world of freedom. Are you afraid? She asked. Her voice was soft. Yes, I admitted. I am terrified. Good, she said. She took my hand again. Fear means you know what you are risking. It means it matters. She looked at me. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting a golden glow over her face. She looked like an angel. Or a demon. Or simply a woman. My woman. Jump, she said. Where? I asked. Into the unknown, she said. We sat up. Below the wall was a slope of soft grass leading into the woods beyond. It was a drop of 10 feet. Dangerous. But not impossible. On 3, Magdalene said. 1, 2, 3. We jumped. The air rushed past us. For a second we were flying. Then we hit the ground. I rolled, absorbing the impact. My ankle twisted, pain shooting up my leg, but I ignored it. I scrambled up. Magdalene was already standing. She offered me a hand. I took it. We stood together at the base of the wall. We looked back at the convent. It was dark now. The lights were coming on in the windows. Somewhere in there, Thorne was sitting in his chair, thinking he had won. Thinking he had contained us. He was wrong. We turned away from the walls. We turned toward the road. It was unpaved, winding into the darkness of the countryside. We did not know where it led. We did not know what waited for us. We had no money. No home. No protection. But we had the crucifix. We had the memory of the candlelight. We had each other. Walk, Magdalene said. We began to walk. Our footsteps were quiet on the dirt. The silence of the convent was behind us. Ahead the world was loud. Crickets chirped. Owls hooted. The wind rustled the trees. It was the sound of life. I looked at her profile as we walked. She was looking straight ahead. But I knew she felt me looking. She reached out and found my hand in the dark. She interlaced her fingers with mine. We are free, I whispered. Not yet, she said. Freedom is not a place, Claire. It is a practice. We must choose it every day. Then I will choose it, I said. Every day. With you. He squeezed my hand. Then we will be free. We walked on into the night. The convent bell began to toll again. Midnight. The day was over. The new day had begun. And for the first time in my life I was not praying for the morning. I was living in it. The road stretched out before us like a ribbon of ink, unrolling into the darkness of the countryside. My ankle throbbed with every step, a sharp biting pain that reminded me of the jump, of the wall, of the life we had left behind on the other side of the stone. But I did not limp. I did not complain. I matched Magdalene's stride step for step, driven by the adrenaline that still coursed through my veins like fire. The night was cold, the air biting at our exposed hands, but I barely felt it. The heat of her hand in mine was enough to ward off the chill. We walked in silence. There was nothing left to say. The words had been spent in the office, on the wall, in the jump. Now there was only the action. The movement. The putting of distance between ourselves and the bell tower that still tolled behind us. I listened for the sound of an engine, the sweep of headlights, the shout of a guard. Every shadow looked like a man. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a pursuit. But the road remained empty. The world was asleep. We were the only two souls awake in the universe, walking away from heaven and into the wild. Magdalene did not look back. She kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sky was beginning to lighten, a bruised purple fading into a soft, tentative gray. She held my hand tightly, her grip anchoring me. When I stumbled on a loose stone, she was there instantly, her arm around my waist, holding me upright. "Lean on me," she whispered. "I am fine," I lied. "You do not have to be fine," she said. "Not anymore. You do not have to be strong. You do not have to be perfect. You can just be." The words settled over me like a blanket. I let my weight shift toward her. I let myself be held. It was a strange sensation after a lifetime of striving, of praying, of denying, to simply be supported. To be cared for, not because of my utility, not because of my vows, but because of who I was. Because I was Claire. And she was Magdalene. And we were together. We walked for hours. The stars began to fade. The outlines of trees emerged from the darkness, skeletal fingers reaching for the dawn. The pain in my ankle grew duller, replaced by a deep exhaustion. My legs felt heavy, my eyelids drooping. But I knew we could not stop. Not yet. We needed shelter. We needed to disappear. As the sun began to crest over the hills, painting the sky in strokes of gold and rose, we reached a small village. It was quiet, sleeping in the morning mist. Cobblestone streets, shuttered windows, a church with a closed door. We did not go to the church. We walked past it. It felt wrong to seek sanctuary there. Our sanctuary was with each other. Magdalene led me to a small inn on the edge of the town. The sign creaked in the wind. "The Traveler's Rest." It was modest, unassuming. She pushed open the door. The warmth inside hit us like a physical wave. The smell of wood smoke and coffee. A fire burned in the hearth. An old man sat behind the counter polishing a glass. He looked up, his eyes wrinkling as he saw us. Two women in habits standing in his lobby at dawn. He did not ask questions. He did not judge. He simply saw our exhaustion. "Room," Magdalene said. Her voice was rough with fatigue. "Only one left," the man said. "Small. Upstairs." "It will do," she said. She reached into the fold of her habit and pulled out a small ring. Gold with a simple stone. It was the only thing of value she had brought. She placed it on the counter. "For a week." The man looked at the ring, then at us. He nodded slowly. He took the key from the board and slid it across the wood. "Room 4. Breakfast at 7. We took the key. We climbed the stairs. The wood creaked under our feet. Room 4 was at the end of the hall. Magdalene unlocked the door. We stepped inside. It was small. A single bed. A wash basin. A window overlooking the street. It was the most beautiful room I had ever seen. Because it was ours. Magdalene closed the door and locked it. She leaned against the wood, closing her eyes. I stood in the center of the room, unsure of what to do. The habits we wore were symbols of who we used to be. They were heavy now. Burdensome. "We should take them off," I said softly. Magdalene opened her eyes. She looked at me, then down at her own clothes. She nodded. She began to unpin the veil. The white fabric fell to the floor. Then the wimple. Then the outer robe. She stood in her simple undergarments, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. It was dark, wavy, untouched by scissors for years. She looked younger. Human. I followed her lead. I unpinned my veil. I let the wool slide from my shoulders. I stood beside her in the dim light of the room. We were just women now. No titles. No ranks. No vows. Just skin and bone and breath. Magdalene crossed the room to me. She reached out and touched my hair. "You are beautiful," she said. "So are you," I replied. She pulled me to her. We embraced. It was not passionate like the library. It was not desperate like the wall. It was gentle. A holding. A grounding. We stood there for a long time, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. I could feel her heart beating against my chest. Slow, steady, alive. We are safe, she whispered. For now, I said. That is all we have, she said. The now. She led me to the bed. We lay down together. We did not sleep immediately. We lay on our sides, facing each other, tracing lines on each other's hands. Talking in whispers. What will we do? I asked. Where will we go? I have a sister, Magdalene said. In the city. She knows who I am. She will help us. We can find work. We can find a home. And God? I asked. The question had been weighing on me since we jumped the wall. Did we leave him behind? Magdalene was silent for a moment. She looked at the crucifix I still held in my hand. The silver was warm from my grip. God is not in the convent, Claire, she said finally. God is not in the vows. God is not in the rules. God is in the love. And we have not left that behind. We have taken it with us. She touched the crucifix. You kept it. It is my faith now, I said. She smiled. A sad, beautiful smile. Then you are still a servant of God. Just a different kind. She leaned in and kissed me. It was soft, lingering. A seal on our new covenant. I closed my eyes and let myself fall into it. The exhaustion finally caught up with me. The warmth of the bed, the warmth of her body, the safety of the locked door. I drifted off to sleep with her hand in mine. When I woke, the sun was high in the sky. The room was filled with light. Magdalene was sitting by the window watching the street below. She had dressed in a simple dress she must have packed in the trunk. She looked like a stranger. And yet she looked more like herself than she ever had in the habit. Good morning, I said. She turned. Good morning. Breakfast is waiting. We ate in the small dining room below. No one looked at us twice. We were just two women having a meal. The invisibility was a gift. We finished eating and walked back up to the room to pack. We would leave for the city today. We would start over. As I folded my clothes, I found the habit lying on the floor where I had dropped it. The black wool. The white veil. I picked it up. It felt heavy. What do we do with these? I asked. Magdalene came over. She took the habit from me. She walked to the small fireplace in the corner. She struck a match. The flame caught the dry wool. She dropped it into the grate. We let them go, she said. We watched the fabric burn. The smoke rose up the chimney, disappearing into the sky. The symbols of our past turned to ash. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. A final release. When the fire died down, Magdalene took my hand. Are you ready? Yes, I said. We picked up our bags. We walked down the stairs. We paid the innkeeper nothing more than a nod. We stepped out onto the street. The air was fresh. The sun was warm. The world was wide open. We walked to the edge of the town where the road continued toward the city. We did not look back at the inn. We did not look back at the direction of the convent. We looked forward. I love you, I said. The words were easy now. They did not feel forbidden. They felt true. I love you, Magdalene replied. We walked on. The road was long. There would be challenges. There would be days when the past tried to catch up. There would be moments of fear, of doubt, of hunger. But we would face them together. We had chosen the hard path. The dangerous path. But it was our path. I thought about the convent. The silence. The candles. The prayers. I did not miss them. I missed the peace I had thought they offered. But I had found a different peace. A peace that was not given by rules but earned by choice. A peace that was not silent but full of life. We reached the crest of a hill. Below us, the valley spread out, green and golden. The city was a smudge on the horizon. A place of noise and people and chaos. It was where we were going. Look, Magdalene said. I looked. The sun was shining on the fields. A bird flew overhead, free against the blue sky. It is beautiful, I said. It is ours, she said. We descended the hill. Our footsteps were light. The pain in my ankle was gone. The fear in my heart was gone. There was only the road. And the woman walking beside me. I clutched the crucifix in my pocket. It was no longer a symbol of obedience. It was a symbol of survival. Of a love that had survived the fire. I touched it with my thumb, feeling the smooth silver. We left the heaven we were promised, I thought. To build a heaven of our own. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. Sounded like a blessing. Or maybe just the wind. Did not matter. We did not need signs anymore. We had each other. Magdalene squeezed my hand. Come on, she said. The bus leaves in an hour. I am coming, I said. And I was finally coming. To myself. To her. To the life we had chosen. The road stretched out before us, endless and bright. We walked into the light, leaving the shadows behind. And in the silence of the open road, our hearts beat louder than any bell. And so, Claire and Magdalene walked away from the walls that tried to hold them, into a world that was uncertain, but theirs to shape. They lost their vows, but they found their truth. They lost their sanctuary, but they found each other. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not following the rules, but following your heart. Thank you for listening to The Nun's Secret Desire. If this story touched you, if you felt the heat of their forbidden love and the triumph of their freedom, please leave a like. It helps more listeners find this tale. Comment below, do you think they made the right choice? Would you have jumped the wall? And subscribe for more dark, immersive romance audiobooks. Until next time, keep your secrets close and your love closer.